Thanks for downloading this episode from Teachers Talk Radio. You can find the full schedule and listen back to all our shows at ttradio.org. Enjoy the podcast.
Good evening and welcome to the Thursday Late Night Show with me, Chris Wilkinson. And tonight's episode is a special one, and it is in honour of International Men's Day. Now, we're here to have some real conversations about issues that don't often get into the spotlight, and particularly in education. And I'm personally quite invested in tonight's topic, and to be honest, I felt the impact of it firsthand. And just out of interest, last month for me was a particularly tough one for no particular reason. Okay, so there's no particular reason why, but it was just the added pressures of regular day-to-day life. So having a 2-year-old daughter who prefers sometimes to be with her mother and just says, you know, mommy, not daddy, daddy's not my friend, and then combined with the demands of teaching, just trying to keep everything running smoothly and staying on top of things just hits harder than usual. But then I had a chat with a colleague, and it was very surprising just how much that chat made a big difference. And it just put the world into perspective, really. And, you know, the words that were said, that, you know, that really helped to deal with that. So those problems really felt like they'd been halved. And it reminded me that even though the problem's still there, a problem shared is a problem halved. And it just reminded me that as men, we don't always do a great job of this, at reaching out and being open about our struggles and realizing that we don't have to carry everything alone. And this brings us to why we're here tonight and why International Men's Day really does matter. The statistics on men's health is really quite grim in the UK, and it should be a wake-up call for us all. So did you know, for example, that men account for 3/4 of all suicides in the UK? And suicide is the leading cause of death for men under the age of 45. In fact, a man dies by suicide every 2 hours in this country. And many of these men struggled in silence, often not seeking support or sharing ideas with others. Now, in education, with its high levels of stress and expectations to keep it together, male teachers can often find themselves isolated, feeling they have to be strong and not only have to do this so that they don't show cracks in their armour. So tonight we'll be exploring these two areas and the role and unique challenges of male teachers and the importance of also supporting boys' well-being in education. And male teachers are expected to be role models and leaders, and often without the space to talk about the pressures that they face. They're expected to keep everything under control, expect to show resilience and hold things together, both inside and outside the classroom. But as I've experienced, sometimes a conversation can be enough just to lift that weight and to remind us that we're not alone in this profession, and it does always help to reduce our mental strain and get back to that joy of teaching that we love to do. Then there's a crucial work of supporting our boys in our schools as well. Boys grow up with similar pressures to toughening it out and often feel that vulnerability is something that to avoid rather than embrace. When we don't address these issues early, they carry forward into our adulthood, affecting mental health and relationships. So I'm pleased to say I'm not alone tonight in tackling these important conversations, and I'm thrilled to be joined by two incredible colleagues. And can I just say, Teachers Talk Radio royalty, really, because we've got Paul, who is a feature of my Sunday mornings, to be honest, and we've got Brent, who quite often, on a Thursday just before me, I get a chance to dip into his shows and really get some inspiration from him. So it's a pleasure to meet you both, gentlemen. How are you doing?
Oh, good. I like the irony of you're not alone, and in fact, that's the whole point, isn't it? So that's just everything you said there was so nice to go, well, actually, I'm joined by fellow men today to have these conversations, because it is what we need to do. So we're going to model, aren't we? We're going to do that teacher modeling thing of trying to have these difficult conversations and be as honest as possible. But that's the point tonight, isn't it? Is to have the honest conversations that sometimes need to happen, and to sort of draw out what stops men not having these conversations, and equally what stops young men from actually having these conversations as well. Because I think it's the future that we have to worry about, and it's them that we do the job for. But at the same time, you know, one of the things about being a teacher is the selflessness, and we don't self-care ourselves, don't we? So it's, we sometimes should take the advice that we're also giving to others, don't we?
Yeah, we put a lot on ourselves, don't we? We do, and quite often we'll be, you know, we'll do this thing where we'll be a bit of a doormat, and we'll thank people for being that doormat, won't we? You know, well, thank you for being here and doing this. And actually, you know, at times, it's fine to be that doormat if, you know, and I mean that in a good way. And what I mean by being a doormat is that we, you know, do things beyond what we have to do, and sometimes we don't get what we want from the students, even just a gratitude, and we thank them for doing it anyway, because we love our job. And absolutely. And I just thought that, you know, in what I was saying there was that I felt that this was getting too much at once here. And I felt like there was a period in the last month where I wasn't getting the thank yous I used to get. You know, when students leave the classroom and they just say thank you, and that's all you look for, isn't it? Thanks for today, Chris. And then coming home, and like I said, my daughter is, you know, she's at that delicate age, 2-year-old, where she does probably prefer her mum at times, or you know, she'll just say things that she doesn't mean. She's 2-year-old, but it hits home, you know, it really does. She'll say, "You're not my friend," and yet, when my wife's at work, for example, I'm the one, I'm doing everything. And because I've done everything at work as well, you think, oh, and it was just got too much, really. So that conversation.
What you just said, Chris, resonates exactly where I hit a really bad point. And I'd say it was about 4 or 5 years ago. And it coincided with the birth of my second child.
Yeah.
And I really struggled. Because I really struggled to be a dad, a husband, a teacher, a son, and all the other little jobs that I do along the way. And it was really tough. I didn't feel as if I was doing anything right. I felt actually I was masking. Masking at work, masking at home, holding my emotions in check. And it was really, really difficult. And it was like a volcano. My wife recommended talk therapy. No, I'm not going to go to that. No, I'm stuck on your plan. No, I'm fine. You know. I resisted for a few weeks until she sat me down and says, "No, I think you'd really benefit." So, okay, I'll try one session. And the guy was my age, looked at me and went, teacher, see a lot of you. And talked to childhood, talk to the occupation. And he's like, perfectly normal. And it was, I'll tell you what it was. It was the validation of realization of what you're going through is perfectly normal. You're not odd. Well, I'm probably a little bit, but you know, there's nothing wrong with you. It's perfectly fine. It's not something that's completely out of the ordinary. It's perfectly normal emotional behavior. You know, it's perfectly acceptable considering your job, being a parent, the pressure and stress of it. And equally, I'd had to chat with my head teacher, and she recommended, because she spotted it, and she herself had some mental health issues that she was open about. It was quite liberating to have a head teacher who was open about it. But she recommended that from a personal point of view. Says, I think you need to talk to somebody, because I don't want to issue you with, say, a warning because of your behavior. And she spotted it was starting to impact upon my profession.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was good. It was a nice intervention. And once I'd gone through a couple of sessions, it just felt calmer. I felt more at ease. I felt more understood. And I looked forward to them. And it's sort of sad to sort of, after the 10 sessions, to sort of say goodbye. And equally, it was the fact that he was a gentleman my age, equally a father as well, and I could relate to him. And it's just what I needed at that time. And I'd fully recommend anybody who's struggling. Talk therapy is a really good avenue. And I never thought that's something I would say, because I'm strong. I've got this. I'm resilient. I don't need any help. Because that was my initial response until I tried it, and then afterwards I thought, actually, that was all right. That wasn't so bad after all.
Well, for me, it was.
It is that deep empathic kind of response and understanding, isn't it? And I think particularly for men, it allows us to kind of drop a lot of our barriers and resistances, as you said there, Brent. And I mean, you know, and probably part of the reason I'm on tonight is the other hat I wear is as a psychotherapist. And I would see a lot of teachers coming through my therapy rooms, and they say a lot of the same things. You and I, Brent, have talked before. As teachers, we are givers. We are always giving out. And there comes a moment when you can no longer pour from the empty cup. You need was interested in what you were saying, Chris. You need that nourishment, and you need that nourishment coming from people like your daughter. The fact that she gives you that little bit of attention. And if it goes to mummy in the evenings, you kind of miss that. It's very, very, very important. And we're very different. We're very different from the lawyers, the barristers, the engineers, the civil servants, the architects. We're constantly working with people, but we close that classroom door and really we're alone. We're the only adult in the room and we are just kind of giving all the time. Yeah.
You kind of need the feedback loop, don't you? You need the feedback loop to sort of sometimes, and if that feedback loop is coming back quite negative and quite stressful, it can, as you said, drain you, and your energy levels can go down and your frustration levels increase, and it can get lonely. You can get, almost this weird thing to say in our profession, but you can get lonely because
100%.
You don't want to show weakness. Because you don't want people to see that you're weak. You don't want the kids to see that you're weak. You don't want your colleagues to see that you're weak. You don't want your family, your wife, your children. You're the man. It's quite the spear object. It's a really horrible thing, isn't it, to admit that you're struggling a little bit, because letting your guard down like that can be. You don't want to because you think it might be exploited.
For me, Brent, you're absolutely right. Being that man, you're absolutely right. You think, you can't do this. You can't, you've got to have a certain way of doing things. And for me, you see signs everywhere saying, just talk to people. It's the right thing to do. It's not a sign of vulnerability. Vulnerability should be your armor. All these things. I didn't believe them. I still, I thought, people are just saying that because it's the right thing to say. But I didn't believe it. True. And do you know what? One day I chose a colleague to speak to, and she had no idea what I was about to say. Like, this was a couple of weeks ago. She had no idea that she was about to, if I'm honest and being a little bit, I suppose I'm being a bit dramatic, she saved a part of me, really. Like that, she helped me realize that I can do this. All I said was, I went, I'm struggling. And I said, I'm struggling today. I'm struggling here. She went, oh, what's wrong? And then I just poured it out. And, she just sat there, and it was just fantastic getting that, if you say that feedback loop, that way of saying, that response. And this is how I related how I felt afterwards, okay? So imagine a cold and frosty morning, you get in the car, the windscreen's fogged up, okay? Not fogged up, it's like glazed over, isn't it? You can't see a thing out of it. You can't drive forward because you can't see. So you need to put the blowers on. Now, the blowers don't, it takes a while for the windscreen to work, but you can see it gradually starting to come away. And one conversation can go from having, completely, glazed over to actually being able to see again. And, it's just that clarity you need sometimes, and using them words, rather than internalizing, because internalizing is the word that I've really got for men. I think, this was you, Brent, because you talked about your emotions. I don't know if this is you, Paul, as well, or as a therapist, you see people saying this, but I think men generally tend to, the conversations I've had, they tend to internalize. So actually saying the words out loud and saying, I'm struggling because, and it's just more or less what I said to you two as well. It just helps see clarity. And like I said, the same problems were there, but I could drive forward because I could see them.
And I think it affects different people in different ways, doesn't it, Paul? I mean, you'd know that from therapy. I mean, I know when I get stressed, I actually get hyper. I go more, not aggressive, but I work through it. I actually start to work more. I start to get agitated more. My energy levels actually ironically increase because I'm like, literally, I'm going to work through this. I'm going to work through this. And it's interesting that other people see it, and other people are like, because you're in the center of the storm, aren't you? You don't. It's the frog in the boiling water. You don't see the impact it's having on others. And others may. But you're not listening. You're not in listening mode until eventually you sort of have to catch yourself and think. If enough people are saying, "Are you all right?" Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. Yeah, I'm okay. Okay. And then you get people you trust saying, "Are you genuinely all right?" What do you mean? And you think, what do they know that I don't know? And it is sometimes catching your breath and taking the advice of others who are concerned for you, who are then saying, I just noticed that you aren't yourself recently. You think, you mean of course I'm myself recently. And it is having the capacity just to accept that rather than go dismiss it. And I think I reached that critical mass when enough people had said to me, are you okay? That I had sort of, and I think that's what men sometimes are accused of being, not the greatest listeners in the world, and guilty is charged. Is that, when people come to you, Paul, is that what they reach that point, or are they sent to you, or do they realize, or is there a combination of?
It would be a combination of all of those, Brent. And the other thing is, people's reactions to stress, anxiety, and so on, they're very different. So obviously yours then is you have that kind of reaction where you work harder, you go faster, the engine burns more and more fuel, and you're trying to kind of catch up and do more to get those wins, to get those successes. Other people, life kind of closes down. They become much more introspective. They go quieter. There's maybe a case to be made for those people who are harder to identify, especially maybe in a school or a staff room, because they will do their job. They are functioning, but that stress, that anxiety, that depression is starting to get hold. And it kind of, they hold it together during the day, but they go home in the evening. Some of them have very poor coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
They don't have any safety nets. They've no one to talk to. And that's when it becomes really, really dangerous. But it is important. You're absolutely right. It's important to listen to colleagues. They are the mirror that reflect how we're going on and reflect the changes in us. And it can be a long time before we kind of, cross the denial barrier a little bit and think, yeah, people are noticing I'm stressed, I'm over quiet, I'm different, I'm changed. And I think then it's important to stop, to reflect how different you are, be honest with yourself. How are you coping? And then I often say, well, what do you lose by coming to one session? You've everything to gain. It's confidential. There's a lot of integrity. We can talk openly. You can say what you need to say. And if it works for you, great. So I would encourage people, to be very self-aware, to listen to others, to ask friends for, their views, their advice, and then to seek, really good, sound, solid help.
I think as well, Paul, I think you're right in the sense that you should listen to feedback, but actually sometimes that feedback can be non-verbal as well. And I've had a lot of, situations where, staff might actually avoid speaking to me because, not because I'm going to say anything to them, just they don't really know what I'm thinking at the time. So I know you two, we don't really know me very well, and hopefully, we can correct that one day. But, I am, I'm quite an outgoing person, and I'm always, I'm, in the staff room at lunchtime, I'll just generate a debate. Like it's been easy the last couple of weeks with the election and a few other things, but I'll just, I might just shout out, "Oh, this has happened today in the news," and that's all, knowing that it's going to start something. And it's just nice to have that report.
You're a Socratic type of guy, then, Chris. Are we?
Yeah. But there's days that I'll not only not do that or speak to people, I'll even put my headphones in. And, I'm not even like looking at anything on the screen really. There's stuff on the screen, but I'm not even listening to the headphones. I'm doing nothing. It's like I'm in that car again. It's like everything's glazed over, and I'm aware, because I'm just quite conscious that people don't necessarily come up to me and say, "Are you okay?" Because I think they just know me and they know I just wouldn't.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't deal with that very well. I'd probably not be horrible back. Maybe I'm not a horrible person, but I might say, something like, "Yeah, I'm fine," or whatever, and that doesn't get them anywhere, and it doesn't get me anywhere. So that's just know
quite a teenage thing to do, isn't it?
It is, of course, it is.
But when we watch that with the children, the fringe goes down. It's interesting. You see some of the children's body language and things like that, don't they? When they withdraw, the body language shows that the hair goes in front. You know, the headphones are in. You just don't you have the subliminal message of leave me alone. I don't want to talk about it. I am not here. You know,
and I keep them vibes out. I must do because they do leave me alone. So it must be the case, you know.
Yeah. It's an interesting point too, Chris. You know, I often think, you know, nobody wants to be down. No. Really, you know, but we're stuck in it. But nobody wants to be like that. No. And you're reminding me there, Brent. I remember a young fella, he'd been 14 or 15, and gosh, he was really impenetrable. So difficult to get through. We were all really worried about him. Nobody could get through directly. And I said to him one day, I said, come into my office, Philip. Look, do you see that bookshelf there? That all needs tidied up, sorted out. Would you do that? You start working on that. And it was that business of getting them. It didn't need sorted out, but he's rearranging books and sorting them out and doing this. And just that little drop in awareness, suddenly we were able to talk, and he just opened up. He just kind of, the floodgates opened, and then you get it all. So I think, if the conditions are right, you know, people want to, you know, they have a leaning towards health and well-being and, you know, being stress-free.
It's the kind of Maslow, you're just saying it's the Maslow thing, isn't it? If you are in a safe, trusting environment and you take your staff in your staff room and you're in a safe, trusting environment and your colleagues are people who you trust, you've got a lot going, haven't you? Same as if you're in a, you know, you've got teachers who know you, a safe, trusting school. And I think one of the problems where I'm going with this is not where things have been headed recently. Schools have become more stressful. Staff rooms have become more stressful, more fractious, more corporate. And I think they're losing some of this connections. I think COVID did that. More isolated. And in fact, I've never felt weirdly as lonely in my teaching profession in the last couple of years, because maybe it's my age, maybe I'm losing some of my old timers. I just don't see that there is a generation of teachers coming behind me who are as investing the time in going into a staff room. I think as teaching's be changing and people are just working to the clock as much now, there isn't as many school trips. There's not as many opportunities to build those relationships. I just feel, I mean, some of my colleagues are my closest friends who I would take bullets for, but I don't know if the people coming behind me are in the same mold, because the same time building those relationships taken me 2 decades in some cases to build those relationships, to be godparents of some of my colleagues. And I reflect on the school that I arrived to and how the Christmas parties where all the staff were there. There was more of a collegiate. I think we are dealing with society now that's so busy that people give the time over to each other. And they those connections stronger. And therefore, if they're not, people won't be in a trusting situation to offload on each other. You know what I'm saying? It's that kind of, I will only trust, you know, I build good relationships with people. I would listen to them. That's when I got listening to them. And I realized they know me. I trust them, and what they're saying to me, I can trust. But is that one of our concurrent issues, is the fractious nature of what's happening in our profession? And the same goes across all jobs, that people are working from home now. Men are working from home. Are we more isolated? Are we more isolated in teaching? And is that harder to break down those barriers? It's harder to help people if you don't have as much actual contact with people.
So we have Darren in the comments who's just making the point that, you know, that just reinforcing Paul's point that, you know, the activity, it helps with the distraction. And I think it's a really good point. And I'm guessing, Darren, you've done that yourself at some point, or you might do that in the future. Who knows? But I've never done that. I must admit, with colleagues, I don't think I've necessarily done that. But I think actually, from what you're saying there, Paul, and from what Darren's sort of saying as well, I actually think that someone did this to me recently. I've just triggered a memory just as I'm sitting here. I go for a run with my colleague, and it's my because I come home to my daughter and my wife's at work. I can't, you know, I've got to stay in the house, obviously, too, and whatever. And so I don't get to see much of the sunlight during the week. So I'll go for a Wednesday lunchtime run, because we do enrichment on a Wednesday, so we don't run. And you know, I go out for a run with with my colleague, and I think he was doing this to me. Actually, I'm now having this was yesterday, well, not yesterday, so a couple of weeks ago, but we go out now every Wednesday, and I'm just wondering, he changed the conversation a couple of weeks ago to what we normally do, and maybe he was doing that, and maybe that was the same week when I had that conversation with my colleague. I'm wondering, maybe but then people like that they're the silent heroes, aren't they? They're the ones who they just do it because they care, not because they want to. There's nothing in it for them except to see their friend or their colleague better off, aren't they? So yeah, it was a good point that from Darren and from Paul.
It's a very interesting point. I think actually Darren's a colleague of ours as well. I enjoy a lot of his shows, and I would often say to parents, who come with maybe teenagers who are difficult as well, go for a drive in the car, because for you to sit across the kitchen table and talk head to head, with your teenage son, this is what happens. You get that head to head, but that, movement in the car, what's happening around, and you're talking, from the driver's seat to the passenger seat, it makes a big difference. There's much less threat, and I think particularly for boys who are going to become men, we need that kind of sense of safety to be able to disclose, because it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage for us, I think, first of all, to recognize what we're feeling, then to admit that we're actually feeling it, and then the huge step is to actually say that in the presence of someone else and be vulnerable and kind of be very afraid of the weakness, which quite often is mythical. You can come out of a counselling session or a conversation or a run and you can think, wow, that nailed it.
You've triggered a memory in mine, actually, when I think about it. There was a time in my life when I did do that. And it was usually when I was 16 down at the park with my best mates. And it's funny that a lot of the lads are like that. That it's strange, isn't it? When the younger boys take a cut and you watch the lads, sometimes you think they're very tight, they're very close to each other, and they have that herd mentality. And I remember, sitting down at the park with lads going, oh man, a couple of drinks in there, underage. And you have these flashbacks to kind of like, man, I love you, I love you. And it's true. Were we not like that when we were like teenage lads sitting around with our best mates and going like, oh man, I love you, I love you, and you're like, somebody comes for you, they've got to go through me. And what happens to us? As we get older, we become more closed off, more. Yes, isn't it? I'm right, aren't I? Don't leave me alone in this, lads. Don't.
No, you are. I, still do get like that when I don't see my friends as much, but because it still can be like that, can't it?
But it's also fake, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
But it's also fake, and fake's not the right word, but it's societal expectations. Particularly males, as we get older, we are supposed to be the broad shoulders, the stiff upper lip. We are supposed to be the ones who cope, who manage, who lead, who go ahead, and that there's none of that weakness and so on.
Paul, I have a question. Just with when you're talking about you're saying that, do you feel that there's and I'm not saying this is me personally, but do you feel that some people may withdraw from sort of their emotions a little bit because they at risk of maybe feeling that they're not promotion worthy in jobs? Like if they, so for example, they if they show their vulnerability too much, they might not be perceived as being someone capable of being SLT in the future, or
is that right? Yes, I think very definitely, yes.
I agree with that, Chris. I completely agree, because then you're showing weakness, and weakness is exploited, and therefore you have to perform. But as teachers, we're actors. Are we not on stage? Or are we not acting? And therefore is not the act also to look competent, to, as a colleague of mine says, play the game. And the amount of times that you get people saying, play the game, look strong, act a certain way. Perception is important. I mean, sometimes in teaching, it's how you're perceived that's important, and not how you are. And that can be quite difficult, because you then can maybe create a persona. I mean, I have a persona as quite a strong, dominant teacher, but one of the things that I try and do sometimes is show my vulnerability with the children and say I'm just a human being after all. In fact, the younger kids are always like, Mr. Poland's a bit, and then the year 11s, they're like, you're quite soft, aren't you? Yeah, but don't tell the younger ones that. I've got a reputation to uphold. Because it's quite hard, isn't it, to let that guard down? But then are you perceived as weak? Are you perceived as not strong enough? Are you perceived as
can you tell us that, Brent? Yeah, can you tell it when you take a moment like that and you take it with a year 11 class, you take 15 minutes out of your history, you tell them a story about your younger self in Warren Point, you show yourself as human and so on. Does it not change the dynamic? Does it not change the relationship, the rapport? And you might not see those young fellas at the weekend, but do you not get a sense that because you've been vulnerable for 15 minutes, they're allowed to be more human at the weekend because Mr. Poland was like that, therefore it's okay for us to be like that? Do you get any sense of that?
But also, equally the currency you have with them is increased because it's kind of, you're a human. You're not one of those alien type teachers. You're all right, sir. You've been through it. And I think, and you get people criticizing that, saying getting down with the kids. It's not. You want to lead them. You want to teach them. You got to reach to them. You got to understand their world. You got to get in their heads a little bit. But equally, you got to show the little bit of thinking. It's like modeling, isn't it? You got to show the thinking in your own logic, isn't it? And say, well, this is how I've come to these decisions. And equally, when you're giving advice sometimes to some young lads, he says, please don't do that. Why not? I may have done things like that when I was your age, and I regret it. And then they get that, what? And I'm like, yeah, I was a human being too. And it's powerful if they know you're honest. And it's powerful if they know you've got some life experience. And it's powerful if they know that you're coming from a point of view of as a learner. I think you're a teacher, aren't you? You're trying to teach them. And it's not just what's in the curriculum. You're trying to, the art of teaching is communicating, isn't it? And that's a way of communicating in an honest way. Problem is, in the society we're living in now, you can imagine if there's a bad faith actor in that class, they might report that back to their parents, or they might go, oh, that teacher's not fit enough, or he's gone off the curriculum. You can leave yourself vulnerable to that, but you have to judge that, the relationship you've got and the relationship you've got with those children, because that could, again, be used against you, couldn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. But talking of communicating, I want to tell you that our show tonight is sponsored by John Catt, who bring you educational books. They are publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools all around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles that they have for you. And if you use that code JCTTR2425, you'll get 20% off.
John has messaged in the comments, and he's sent a few comments. And John was a guest of mine a couple of weeks ago with John Lawson, it was, and he was a guest of mine who on my show Teaching in the USA, and he did a great. He was a great guest. He was unbelievable. In fact, we learned so much about the American system through John. So thank you very much for that, John. You've sent a few comments in, and just want to read a few of them. I know they've sort of been on the screen already, but you just made the point that at the beginning of every semester, he used to spend 2 days with his students writing thank you cards to teachers. And, so many of these teachers keep those cards forever. I know I kept my card. I still keep all of my cards. Yeah. And do you know what? I find myself reading them all of the time. And it's just them 2 words, thank you, that just make all the difference. And he's made the point that it's saved a few careers as well. He also makes the point as well that it costs nothing, to do that and become practices. And maybe as men, maybe we just need that a bit more. I don't know. Maybe we are a bit more needy. I don't know. I have absolutely no problem with saying that I want thank yous from time to time. A thank you means more to me than anything else, really. And he just made this final point as well that he shows the movie I Am Sam, and I've never seen it. I can't relate. I don't know what it means, but I'm guessing it's a tearjerker because he says he cries as much as the students. And like what you said, Brent, that's modelling, isn't it? It's modelling normal behaviour. And as teachers, we're not just...
I just find it ironic with John's backdrop is one of my favourite movies, and that's Good Will Hunting. There's two Robin Williams movies that get me every time: Dead Poets Society and Good Will Hunting. And Robin Williams is isn't he? I'm seamlessly got to do something now. Isn't he the classic example of a man who gave a lot, a man who was so intelligent, a man who was such a genius in comedy, and the world is such a poorer place without him. And yet, ultimately, he suffered from mental health issues, and isn't that the tragedy of how sadly he took his own life in the end? He had, I think, it was an incurable disease which we weren't privy to at the time, but he did have a lot of demons, and there is behind the scenes of a lot of great individuals, when you find out later on in their life their troubles, and you think they masked, they hid it, and he is a classic example of that. But I love the essence of Good Will Hunting, of the old teacher. And what's really good, and it goes back to Paul's point, is I think we've got the ability in the classroom. Sometimes the students rescue me. Sometimes just doing my job can rescue me and make me feel worthwhile and give me that sense of worth and give me that sense of making a difference. And I got a message earlier on from an ex-student who's 6 years left saying, "You taught me a lesson years ago," and there's a whole thing I've got to reply to. I'm like, where did that come from? I have no idea. And every once in a while I get, and during COVID was like that. It was dark days during COVID, but I got a lot of message. Patch Adams, great movie as well.
It is too.
It is, yeah. I mean, the whole catalogue, let's be honest with the whole Robin Williams catalogue. I mean, who doesn't like Nano Shazbat, But that's the thing, isn't it? Our job does provide us an opportunity to tap into a resource which is actually our young people, and they are amazing to be around, isn't it? And that can also be a double-edged sword, because you can feel guilty you're not doing enough for them, and you can feel guilty you're not good enough for them. But when it's working well, it is a good pick-me-up, isn't it? It's a really good help, because you're surrounded by honest people, and kids are brutally honest. That's me, it's one thing about them. They know, they'll go, "Sir, are you okay?" And sometimes I'm having a bad day, and it's just a kid will know, and they'll go, "Sir, are you all right?" Yeah, I'm fine. And I'm doing that fine thing again, and I'm thinking, what do they know? Because they see us, don't they? They see us too.
I think you're right, Brent. Yes, I know you said earlier we were actors, but it made me think we might be actors, but there's nowhere to hide from children. When you're in front of that class, they see right through you.
They do. They really do. And I think sometimes as well, they especially with me, they'll know almost what sort of lesson they're going to have with me within a couple of minutes. And look at 9.9 times out of 10, they know they're in for a good lesson. What I mean by that is they know I'm in a good mood, that sort of thing. And there might be, there might be one moment. I remember it was only a couple of weeks ago. I had an absolute meltdown in my politics class because I had this. I was teaching elections at the time, and it was the 2024 stuff was quite new because obviously the election just happened. And could IACers get this one thing up on the screen? It just wouldn't work, and any other time would work. And I found myself having a bit of a hissy fit, if I'm honest. I don't know if that's the correct way of saying things, but I just had but they started laughing because I'm normally could just shrug this off, but I meant it. I wasn't. I was livid. I was spitting feathers, and they just knew. Actually, we need to stop laughing. Yeah, Chris isn't taking this laugh very well. And then the next time I was fine, but that one time they knew. And look, I didn't go too far with it, but I was a little bit, come on, this isn't funny. I'm trying to teach you this, and and we're quite new into the year, aren't we? I mean, I teach AS and A level, so they were my AS group. I only had them for a couple of weeks, and they were like, "Are we going to get this all the time?" And I was quite quick to reverse that, and in future lessons and whatever, and make it known that it was a. But yeah, just have them moments, and you can't hide. There's nowhere to go. There's no unless you're fortunate enough to have a co-teacher, you're there, and you've got to pick up the pieces from there as well. And that was kind of in my low point. So, and we are actors, but sometimes we forget our lines, don't we?
Isn't the powerful thing, and I've done that, is to say afterwards, the next lesson, you know what, kids, last lesson.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry about that. And they look at you and they go, "That's all right." Think, no, it's not. And no, it's fine, sir. Don't worry about it.
That's exactly right. That's exactly what happens.
Sometimes the kids are just straight away to forgive, whereas adults can be judgy, and tough and harsh. But the kids can be quite brilliant that way when they're kind of like, They are quite forgiving. They are quite malleable, and they are quite.
And they don't mind that actually. They don't mind being a bit off script, do they? They don't mind that from time to time, as long as it's and like if that will say September 2024. I'll have them in my second year, and it'll be like, say, I don't know, April 2026, and they'll go, "Can you remember when you did that in the first year?" They'll remember. I'll have forgotten all about it, but they don't forget. And they sometimes they write it on the cards, when they leave. Like I still remember when, and that of all the things you do with them, the hours and hours you spend them, they remember that one little thing. So we do have to make sure we don't go off script too often, do we? But
I'm listening to you both, and you're both still in school. I'm retired. But I'm just wondering, are there systems and structures in schools to help look after? Obviously, they would look after everybody, but we're talking about men this evening. I wonder, are there systems and structures, or are there people, or is it just kind of random? What's your experience of?
I think there's just tokenism. I think there's a lot of, let's have a well-being day. Yay! Okay. And we've had some attempts. I mean, we've done some internal ourselves, sports teams. I mean, you look at some things that actually work really well. I think bonding exercise, sports teams, away days. I think some schools do a little bit of a well-being day, and actually it is what you make of it. You can go, and I think last time we did it, all the boys just got a football, went outside and kicked each other, and it's great. And the ladies were in doing yoga and mindfulness classes. So it was kind of a little bit of a gender split. It was so stereotypical. And we had art classes going, and we had sort of feng shui and all the rest of it. And it was good. It was really, really good. We had a day out with just to have a bit of fun. But I do think the fun's going out of schools a little bit as well, and things got very, very serious. And the banter's not. And it's funny, I don't want to do the whole kind of like men and banter thing. But the staff rooms, the banter, the fun, things have got very stressful in schools and a little bit toxic in some schools and too corporate.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Brent, because on Tuesday, for International Men's Day, a couple of the chaps in our workplace have sort of got together and done an initiative, and the college is very supportive, so it's no problem. We've gone stereotypical. We've gone for the let's all just put our football tops on or our sports tops on and just show that mental health has no colours. So one of my best friends at work, he's a big Newcastle United fan. I'm a big Sunderland fan. But you know what? On that day, we're on the same team, and we've gone for the stereotype. And I don't know. I think maybe it'll bring a few conversations, at least anyway, hopefully anyway, especially about how well my team's doing. So
well,
there we go.
Yeah, it could be the derby's back on next year, isn't it?
Hopefully, fingers crossed.
We've just been told in the chat, look at this, we've just been told in the chat by our backroom team, who are the ladies, oh look, how long did it take before football?
No, it was an honorary mention. It was an honorary mention. It was just,
what is the first conversation I have with my father back in Ireland? What is the first opening conversation?
I can imagine whoever you support, is it?
It's the Liverpool supporter. So
yes, so I was Liverpool doing, yeah.
Exactly, and it becomes first conversation with my best mate up in Manchester. He's a Man United supporter. We became, and yes, it is stereotypical, but it's stereotypical for a reason, because it opens conversation, doesn't it? It is a conversation starter. You go into a pub and you've got a couple of blokes sitting there, and you go, you strike up a conversation. It's safe conversation as well, isn't it? It's
and you can do the same with the students as well. You can pick out the ones who are football fans. I've got a Norwegian student who supports Liverpool, and it's great because I've almost said, well, can you not do a halfy where, because it's International Men's Day, so you can put your Norway top on, but put a Liverpool scarf on as well, and just really go for it. Just having that conversation. But it's not just football, because I know there's lads in my class who have no interest in that. So you just find something to relate to. But I think it's important. Especially gaming, and especially
another good entry point, isn't it? And again, you go to kids like, oh, if you got your FIFA team, how good's your FIFA team?
Yeah,
let me show you mine. If you show your, and they're like, "Why you've got a better FIFA team?"
Yeah,
I've been playing FIFA since 1992, way before you were born. Or Champ Manager, how good your Champ Manager team are, and you turn around and drop it in and go like, "What game are you playing at the moment? Are you playing games, sir?" Yeah, I'm playing games. I like playing games too, and it's just, again, it's that.
Yeah.
But again, they do, don't they? So interesting thing with the future generation of lads. This is what They kind of do. But then again, at university, I remember sitting in my university digs at 5 o'clock in the morning playing, Man with a Golden Gun, GoldenEye in 1996. And I'm thinking, this is how I got to know these guys at university.
I always tell my second years, I always tell my sort of upper six that, me and my flatmate at uni, we used to decide who was making the breakfast based on who won the FIFA match, and we were always the same team. I was always Aston Villa because there was a player who played for Villa at the time, Gabby Agbonlahor. He was the fastest on the game, so if you got through on goal, you were through. But he was Tottenham because there was the defense were good, so it was always evenly tied. And sometimes I got to make the breakfast, sometimes he did, and the students love that because it's also talking about my experience at university as well, and they love to envision that they could be doing that as well. So
it's conversations. It's good just to have that conversation because it relates, and it's that ability to relate, not to be isolated. Absolutely. Because I do worry about the gamers who are isolated, the ones that go into the room and don't. Whereas there is some gamers who do put the headsets on and they do socialize and they do, and that's helping. And I know some parents don't like that, but actually that's kind of healthy as well, isn't it? Because at least there's games, they're talking to each other, they're communicating with each other. It's good fun. And it's I like that, as long as they're not spending like I did at university 6 o'clock in the morning when they shouldn't be getting up to go to lectures playing the gold. I mean, we wouldn't if their generation used to look at the games.
Man with Golden Gun. So what year was that then? I'm trying to think.
96. It was on the SNES. Yeah, and literally, but it was just good fun, and the lads, the boys. It was just like being boys playing computer games, and the fun was just good fun. Who won, who lost, competition, and the next day, it was happy times. It was just fun times, and it was just boys having fun, and it was innocent, and it was nice. And I do think when you vilify the technology now, people go quick, these kids these days, and you think actually there's a lot of good things that they're doing with technology. There's a lot of positive stuff, but of course in excess it can be dangerous. So there's the other side of that when you have locking themselves in their room and watching doom scrolling. So the other side of that is quite dangerous as well, leading to mental health. So that can be good for mental health if you're socializing with people online, but you can have the opposite of that when you've had people, with cults and all sorts of stuff and being groomed and everything. So it's a double-edged sword again, isn't it?
But I think you raise an interesting point there. And I mean, I know, again, people coming to me through the therapy rooms, one of the things they need is they need to know and to be known. That's a very, very important psychological concept. It's a fundamental, we all have that impulse and need to know. And I suppose, when our mental health isn't good and things are closing down with us, or, we're acting out or whatever, we begin to lose that sense of who we are, our own identity. And people can come to me and they haven't a clue, what's going on with them. And yet you can talk to children about their clubs, their football clubs, and who they support, because that's suddenly you getting to know them. Okay, it's a football club, but it's a start. And for children who want to hold on for dear life in case they're embarrassed by expressing an emotion, to talk about a football club and how well Manchester United did or didn't do at the weekend, it's kind of a medium for expressing emotions.
It's a way in, isn't it?
It's a way in.
And as John says, boys just want to have fun. That's a really good way of putting it.
Was that not girls? Was it not girls?
Yeah. Well, you know what? It works both ways, doesn't it? And our very own Darren once again comment, just making the point that gaming was a sanity saver for a lot of students through lockdown, and it still is today, isn't it? It's a safety net. It's a way to do that. So, chaps, I just wonder, just to draw close to this conversation, I just wonder if we can finish on quite an open question that just makes you, just to ties it into what we're doing, and just wondering if we can get a headline here. So I'm looking for a headline. So I'm looking at Brent for this because Brent's coming out with all these headlines. I'm been checking the Twitter and it's just, or X, should I say, and Brent's taking all the headlines tonight, which is, so Paul, this might actually be your opportunity. I don't know. So if I was to just ask you,
hold on, Chris, are you making a competition out of this? What's your boy thing to make a competition out of this?
Well, look, I'm not making a competition, but I kind of am. So it's up to, let's see.
One question, Chris. Sorry to interrupt. Do you like winning? Do you like winning? And
me,
beyond?
100%. I hate losing. Yeah, I wouldn't. If I didn't think I could win, I wouldn't compete. I used to, when I played tennis. I don't play as much now because I struggle with just because I used to play in the night time and childcare and whatever. But I used to play tennis. Some men in particular love to play people better than them so they can improve. I'm the opposite. I'd quite happily thump someone just to make me feel better. Like, I'm honest.
You've got brothers. You've got our brothers. You've definitely got brothers.
Yeah. And I can't handle it very well. And that's another thing. I was never good at losing, by the way.
Especially to your brother. Especially to your older brother. I'm guessing you've got an older brother.
Well, an older brother-in-law, yeah, he's quite competitive, and like I say, losing or not getting your own way is an entirely different time. I appreciate that, but just to round things up and just to see if we can get a headline here, I'm just going to ask the very simple question of what does International Men's Day mean to you as a teacher?
Well, I'll start. International Men's Day as a teacher means we matter.
Okay, do you know what? Sure. You know what? But that's great because that's within the character count, isn't it? We matter. So, so we're gonna have no problems putting that on Twitter anyway. I don't think. Brent, can you top that? Do you think?
Oh, what does International Men's Day mean to me?
As a teacher.
As a teacher, be proud to be a good man. Be proud. Be proud to be it, because I think pride is the important thing with boys. Having pride in themselves, having pride in what they're going to do, having pride in their achievements. I think pride is an important thing. I think I look at the future generation sometimes. I say, it's like that old thing. I'll sometimes say to them, do something today to make me feel proud.
Yeah,
do your best. And I think that's boys. When you drill into, I think the essence of what boys, you talk about joining armies and going and being heroes and all the rest of it, and sort of how we are conditioned. I think boys need pride in themselves and pride in what they can do. So International Men's Day is be proud to be a man.
So I wonder, just as a quick comment from anybody listening, who do you think won that one? I just to spice it up a little bit. Does anyone?
I think he's done me on that one. I think I'll concede defeat to the prop on this one.
Do you know what? I think just to keep it nice and it might be best if we don't get any comments on that. I don't know. I can't help myself. I'm a man. What can I say?
Oh no, I'm conceding defeat. I have no problem.
No. John's just come out with a point there that it was a draw. I'll take a score draw. I think we'll settle for a draw.
This is not primary school sports day. Paul can win. But I'm reverse psychology in this. I'm doing the magnanimous defeat, but actually gives me the moral high ground. You see. There
we go. Well, look, gentlemen, thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much for giving up your time to come and speak to help me out with this tonight. It's always really helpful when, of course, we don't do this alone, and it's very important that we have a conversation about this. And thank you everybody who's joined in on the chat as well, and everyone who's watched it on tonight. And hopefully we'll meet again in future and do a follow up at some point. And hopefully in the future we can do an event where we can all see each other in the flesh as well. But for tonight, that is the Late Late Show with me, Chris Wilkinson. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.